the brutal beating that left him black and blue. In a terrifying display of violence, a man in his late 20s was brutally beaten by a group of aggressors, leaving him battered and bruised. The attack occurred late Saturday night in a secluded alleyway, with no witnesses coming forward to shed light on the motives behind the vicious assault. The victim, who wishes to remain anonymous, was rushed to the hospital with severe injuries, including a broken jaw and multiple contusions covering his body. Unfortunately, this incident is not an isolated case of senseless violence in our community. As instances of assault and aggression continue to rise, it is imperative for law enforcement to take swift action in bringing the perpetrators to justice. The victim's recovery will undoubtedly be long and arduous, but with the support of his loved ones and the dedication of authorities, we hope to see a resolution that brings peace and closure to this horrific ordeal. The brutal beating that left him black and blue was a harrowing incident that occurred on a quiet street in the late hours of the night. The victim, whose identity remains undisclosed for privacy reasons, was walking home alone after a late shift at work when he was suddenly ambushed by a group of assailants. The attack was swift and merciless, with the attackers using their fists and feet to pummel the victim with a ferocity that left him gasping for air. The victim was outnumbered and overwhelmed, unable to defend himself against the onslaught of violence that rained down upon him. The attackers showed no mercy, continuing their assault even after the victim had fallen to the ground. They kicked and punched him with such force that his body was left battered and bruised, the skin on his face turning an ominous shade of black and blue. Passers-by who witnessed the attack were too terrified to intervene, choosing instead to call the authorities for help. By the time the police arrived on the scene, the attackers had fled, leaving the victim lying on the pavement in a pool of his own blood. The victim was rushed to the hospital, where he was treated for a broken nose, fractured ribs, and severe contusions all over his body. The doctors noted with concern the extent of his injuries, expressing shock at the level of brutality inflicted upon him. The victim's family and friends were horrified by the news of the attack, unable to comprehend how such a senseless act of violence could have occurred. They rallied around him, offering their love and support as he struggled to recover from the trauma of the assault. The police launched an investigation into the attack, poring over surveillance footage and conducting interviews with witnesses in an effort to identify the perpetrators. They promised to leave no stone unturned in their quest for justice, determined to hold those responsible for the vicious attack accountable for their actions. As details of the attack emerged, the community was left reeling with shock and disbelief. The incident served as a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk in the shadows, waiting to prey upon unsuspecting victims in moments of vulnerability. In the aftermath of the attack, the victim found himself grappling with a profound sense of fear and trauma that lingered long after his physical injuries had healed. The scars left on his body served as a constant reminder of the brutal beating that had left him black and blue, a testament to the deep and lasting impact of violent crime. Despite the pain and suffering he endured, the victim vowed to never let the attackers win. He found solace in the love and support of his family and friends, drawing strength from their unwavering presence by his side as he embarked on the long and arduous journey towards healing and recovery. Physical injuries sustained in the brutal beating were severe and extensive, leaving the victim black and blue from head to toe. The assailant's ferocious attack resulted in a myriad of injuries, some of which were visible on the victim's body immediately after the incident. Upon examination by medical professionals, it was determined that the victim had suffered multiple contusions and bruises all over his body. His face was notably swollen and discolored, with deep purple and black bruises obscuring his features. The force of the blows had caused lacerations on his forehead and cheeks, further adding to the extent of his injuries. His eyes were bloodshot and swollen shut, indicating trauma to the delicate tissues surrounding them. The victim's torso bore the brunt of the attack, with several broken ribs and internal bleeding observed during medical evaluation. The force with which he had been struck had caused significant damage to his chest area, making it painful for him to breathe or move. The medical team also noted extensive bruising and swelling on his arms and legs, a result of the repeated kicks and punches he had endured during the assault. In addition to the visible injuries, the victim also reported experiencing persistent headaches, dizziness, and nausea in the days following the attack. These symptoms indicated a possible concussion or traumatic brain injury, which required further medical evaluation and treatment. The emotional toll of the assault was also evident, as the victim displayed signs of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder in the aftermath of the incident. The extent of the physical injuries sustained in the brutal beating was staggering, requiring intensive medical intervention to address the immediate and long-term effects of the assault. The victim's recovery process was expected to be lengthy and challenging, with the possibility of lasting physical and psychological repercussions from the traumatic event. The severity of the injuries sustained in the brutal beating served as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of violence and aggression. The victim's physical and emotional well-being had been profoundly impacted by the assault, highlighting the need for swift and effective intervention to ensure his safety and recovery. The ramifications of such acts of brutality reverberate far beyond the initial incident, underscoring the importance of prevention, intervention, and support for victims of violence. In conclusion, the physical injuries sustained in the brutal beating were severe, extensive, and life-altering for the victim. The visible bruises, fractures, and lacerations were only a fraction of the damage inflicted upon him, as the psychological and emotional scars of the assault would also require time and care to heal. The victim's journey to recovery would be a challenging and arduous one, but with the proper support and resources, he would be able to rebuild his life and move forward from this traumatic experience. The brutal beating that left him black and blue had far-reaching emotional consequences for the victim. The physical wounds may have healed over time, but the emotional scars from such a traumatic experience can linger for years to come. The victim may have experienced feelings of fear, helplessness, and betrayal in the aftermath of the attack. The emotional impact of the violent assault can manifest in various ways, such as flashbacks, nightmares, and feelings of anxiety or depression. The victim may struggle to trust others, especially if the attack was carried out by someone they knew. They may fear for their safety and well-being, constantly looking over their shoulders and living in a heightened state of alertness. The victim may also experience a sense of shame and self-blame, especially if they were targeted due to their race, gender, or sexual orientation. They may question what they did to deserve such violence and wonder if they could have done anything differently to prevent the attack. These feelings of guilt and self-doubt can be incredibly debilitating and may lead to a negative self-image and low self-esteem. The emotional impact of the brutal beating can also affect the victim's relationships with others. They may struggle to open up to friends and family about what happened, fearing judgment or disbelief. They may also have difficulty forming new relationships or trusting others, as they have been betrayed and hurt by someone they once trusted. The victim may isolate themselves from others, withdrawing from social activities and avoiding contact with people who remind them of the assailant. In addition to these emotional challenges, the victim may also grapple with feelings of anger and resentment towards the perpetrator. They may struggle to forgive and move on from the traumatic experience, reliving the attack over and over in their minds. The victim may also experience feelings of powerlessness and a loss of control over their own lives, as their sense of safety and security has been shattered by the violent assault. Seeking professional help and support is essential for the victim to cope with the emotional aftermath of the brutal beating. Therapy can help the victim process their feelings, work through trauma, and develop healthy coping mechanisms. Support groups can also provide a safe space for the victim to connect with others who have experienced similar forms of violence and find a sense of community and understanding. In conclusion, the emotional impact of a brutal beating can be profound and long-lasting. It is crucial for victims to seek help and support to navigate the complex emotions and challenges that arise in the aftermath of such a traumatic experience. With the right resources and assistance, victims can begin to heal from their emotional wounds and reclaim a sense of safety, security, and well-being. Several witnesses came forward to share their accounts of the brutal beating that left him black and blue. One witness, Jane Smith, recalled hearing loud shouting and commotion coming from the alleyway where the incident took place. She immediately called 911 and rushed to the scene to see what was happening. Upon arriving, Smith saw a group of individuals surrounding a man who was lying on the ground, visibly injured and in need of medical attention. She described the scene as chaotic and disturbing, with some of the individuals involved in the altercation still present and aggressive towards the victim. Smith noted that she saw one of the attackers kicking the man while he was down and another wielding a metal pipe. Another witness, John Doe, was walking his dog nearby when he heard the sounds of a physical altercation occurring in the alleyway. he approached the scene cautiously and witnessed a group of individuals violently attacking the victim. Doe recounted seeing the victim being punched, kicked, and struck repeatedly with objects. He described the attackers as being aggressive and unrelenting in their assault on the defenseless man. Doe immediately called 911 and attempted to intervene to stop the beating, but was threatened and pushed away by the attackers. A third witness, Sarah Johnson, was sitting in her nearby apartment when she heard the sounds of yelling and screaming coming from the alleyway. Concerned for the safety of those involved, she went to her window and saw a group of individuals attacking the victim. Johnson described the attackers as being filled with rage and malice, showing no mercy towards the victim as they continued their assault. She could hear the sounds of bones breaking and the victim's cries for help echoing through the alleyway. All witnesses reported feeling shocked and horrified by the brutality of the attack they witnessed. They expressed concern for the safety and well-being of the victim, urging authorities to quickly respond and provide him with the necessary medical attention. The witnesses expressed their willingness to provide statements and cooperate with law enforcement in order to bring the perpetrators to justice. In the aftermath of the incident, the community rallied together to support the victim and ensure that justice was served. A vigil was held in his honor, with friends, family, and concerned citizens coming together to show their solidarity and condemn the senseless violence that had occurred. The witnesses reiterated their commitment to standing up against such acts of brutality and working towards creating a safer and more compassionate community for all. After enduring a brutal beating that left him black and blue, the victim has been met with an outpouring of support from friends, family, and concerned citizens who have rallied to seek justice on his behalf. The heinous nature of the crime has shocked the community, prompting calls for action to ensure that the perpetrators are held accountable for their actions. In the wake of the attack, local law enforcement officials have launched an investigation into the incident, working tirelessly to identify and apprehend those responsible for the violent assault. The victim, who sustained significant injuries during the altercation, has been cooperating with authorities to provide any information that may lead to the arrest and prosecution of the perpetrators. In addition to the efforts of law enforcement, community members have also come together to support the victim in his time of need. Fundraisers have been organized to help cover the cost of medical expenses and rehabilitation for the victim, who faces a long road to recovery following the brutal attack. Donations have poured in from individuals and organizations alike, demonstrating a strong sense of solidarity and compassion for the victim and his family. Furthermore, advocacy groups and local organizations have taken up the cause of seeking justice for the victim, demanding that the perpetrators be brought to justice and held accountable for their actions. Protest marches and rallies have been organized to raise awareness of the incident and to call for action to prevent similar acts of violence from occurring in the future. Community leaders and activists have also called upon elected officials to prioritize public safety and to allocate resources to ensure that all residents feel safe and secure in their neighborhoods. The victim himself has shown remarkable courage and resilience in the face of adversity, refusing to be intimidated or silenced by the perpetrators of the attack. He has spoken out publicly about his experience, sharing his story in hopes of shedding light on the issue of violence and advocating for greater awareness and support for victims of similar crimes. His bravery and determination have inspired others to stand up against injustice and to work towards a more inclusive and compassionate society. As the victim continues to recover from his injuries and rebuild his life in the aftermath of the attack, he can take solace in the fact that he is not alone in his struggle for justice and support. The outpouring of solidarity and compassion from his community has been a source of strength and hope in the face of adversity, demonstrating the power of unity and collective action in the pursuit of a safer and more just society for all. With the support of his loved ones, his community, and those fighting alongside him for justice, the victim can begin to heal and move forward with newfound resilience and determination. In conclusion, the incident described in this article serves as a stark reminder of the devastating impact that violence can have on individuals. It is imperative that we work towards creating a society where such acts of brutality are not tolerated, and where all individuals are able to live free from fear of harm. May this story serve as a call to action for all of us to stand together against violence and create a safer, more compassionate world for all.